Welcome, and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. Today I thought on the program we would approach something that I know fascinates pretty much everybody out there because of the fact that each and every one of us, when we remember, when we go to sleep at night, we dream. The question is, though, is what do dreams mean? Sometimes this has been one of those things that almost is paradoxical, especially for the scientific world, to try to decide where do dreams come from, what do they mean, and what should we do once we decide we understand its meaning. On our program today is a guest who was probably feeling the very same way when he finally found his life changed by the mid-1990s, someone who really believed in science, but at one particular point had a profound experience that actually changed, or as he said, pretty much rocked his foundation. So then he found himself seeing spirits and auras, things that he didn't believe in. He really certainly didn't believe in life after death. After all, science hasn't been able to prove that there is such a thing, or has it? On the program today, we're going to be talking about how to interpret dreams. In fact, that's the title of the book, is How to Interpret Your Dreams and Discover Your Life Purpose. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today our guest, Michael Sheridan. Michael, how are you today?
Very good. A little bit nervous.
You don't have to be nervous. Think of this as one of those lucid dreams where all of a sudden now you're able to fly. Now, give our listeners a little bit of your background, starting when all of this really began for you.
Okay, well, like you said, I was very scientific. I took the 3 science subjects on offer. I did biology, chemistry, and physics. Mathematics was my favorite subject. But I was working in software development, and to help myself do that, I was managing a team of 18 people, and to help myself do that, I took some courses that help you focus your mind, and at the same time I was doing karate just for staying fit. And what I didn't realize, I was doing the 2 things that are really good if you do want to wake up and have an experience such as seeing spirits, which is what happened to me. So I was doing very grounding techniques with the karate, and then I was doing meditation with the mind-focusing techniques. And I was doing that for years, and then suddenly, out of the blue, this happened to me. I started seeing spirits. It was an extremely unpleasant experience. Lots of screaming, lots of fear. And it just didn't fit with anything I believed. Absolutely didn't fit. So I didn't know what to do with it. I had no frame of reference. I'd already turned away from the church at that stage in my life. I mean, many years before that in my life. So it wasn't welcome, and I had nowhere to go. But it is what started me. It was the kick in the ass that got me questioning, okay, is there more to life? I mean, initially I thought, okay, maybe I'm mad. Mm-hmm. And that would have been okay, because there's probably medication to help you with this. But I started asking people about it, people that I knew who were already cracked. I had this attitude at this time in my life that anybody into anything psychic or spiritual was an absolute crackpot. And so it was hard then to approach these people and say, look, this is happening to me. Do you have any experience with it? And it took a while before I actually met somebody who did have experience and told me what I could do. So it started off really as a horrible thing, and it kept happening. But after, when I look back at it and I say that's the best thing that ever happened to me in my life, because it would have taken something like that to wake somebody who was so deeply asleep like me, to wake me up.
Mm-hmm. And it's quite fascinating, too, to realize that people tend to, especially this day and age, place science with such esteem. I think that sometimes we have, I guess, become misguided about what science actually is or what it's supposed to do. My understanding is science is one of those things that we question and through a methodic process try to prove what is unknown, and then try to repeat that so that way there's some consistency. But can you give me a little bit of clarity on what you think that is?
On what I think?
On science, first of all, because a lot of times you hear people wielding the science pitchfork at times to back things off, or people are saying, no, let's explore faith a little while till we can grab something concrete enough to go, okay, let's now take that next bold step.
Well, I still rave about science. I still think it's fantastic, and it's given us so much of what we have in the world. But metaphysics and science at the, below the molecular level, they meet. They don't contradict about anything. They say everything is energy, everything is one. So if you read books, like the Dancing Woolly Masters by Gary Zukav. That would be like a crossover science and metaphysics. It's really fascinating, and a scientist will tell you, especially in physics, there is so much they still don't know. We can only see, it's like we can only see the surf on the top of the waves. The matter that we can actually see is only 1/10 of what's there in the universe. So we're looking at 1/10 and saying, and even in that we know very little about it, and saying we know everything. So, but scientists aren't, because they're saying, dark matter is there, dark energy is there, and we're just going to keep plugging away until we find more. But science is about having an open mind. It's about, obviously, it's about reproducing experiments, etc., so that you can try test out your theories. But still, it's open. I mean, the whole idea that radio waves, things that are invisible, all that sort of stuff was discovered by science and then harnessed and used. I mean, we're all using them right now, so it's just remarkable.
Now, it's interesting too, Michael, because I see that, this was a journey that, started roughly about 10 years ago. And when you pick up your book, How to Interpret Dreams, I've been somebody who loved reading about dreaming because I was trying to answer some of my own questions about why was I having the kind of dreams I was having. How did I get to a point of lucidity? It took me years to understand, well, what is a lucid dreamer? I don't know what that is, because when I would describe what was going on, people would say to me, well, you're having lucid dreams. You're a lucid dreamer. And it wasn't until probably about my early 30s or late 20s, somewhere right around there, that, well, what is a lucid dreamer? Well, that's somebody who's able to, in dreams, become consciously aware that you're dreaming, and you can actually begin to sort of control the outcomes, things like that. So I began to really read about that. And boy, things really got nuts after that. But what I'm getting at is that in your book, it surprised me that with just 10 years, give or take, of experience, when you started on this, the deep passion of which we explore the question, why am I here? And that through dreams, it answers that question for you if you're paying attention, and that you can learn to work this so that you can have a highly successful life for whatever reason, special reason that your soul chose to come to Earth to have the experience that it chose to have. Let's talk about that as a starting point.
Yeah, well, you're saying it absolutely perfectly. So my quest began.
Well, when the Irish created, for instance, what is that particular beer that was perfect? I knew I had to have something perfect there for you.
You are, of course, referring to Guinness.
Exactly.
Yeah, it actually happened to me in around 1990, 91. So it's 24 years now, and I wrote the book 15 years in. Okay. I wrote the book thinking I had reached the stage where, okay, now I know as much as I'm ever going to know about dreams, and I was sort of writing the book as a kind of a sign-off, and now I'm going to do something different. But instead, it renewed my passion, and today I'm still writing about dreams. So you never know where you're going to go, but you're exactly right. What I discovered, dreams were one of the last things I actually hit. So I tried almost everything. I was like a course junkie. I was doing everything that was going within reason. It had to be something that my scientific framework still allowed. So for a long time I was looking at Stone Age structures and stuff like that, because there's just tons of that in Ireland. And so I slowly progressed into slipping further down the slope of spirituality. But when I hit dreams, I discovered that they tell you, they call you out, warts and all. They tell you exactly the way you are, why you are the way you are, what happened to cause that, when in your lifetime that happened, and how it's holding you back today, and what you need to do to eliminate it. And when you do eliminate it, it tells you this is what's going to improve in your life, and this is why you're here. This is the part I love about dreams. They tell you why you're here, what you came here with. And it's very important to realize that people think, okay, I can go and I can learn a course to learn how to do healing or learn how to be a counselor, etc. Your dreams show you that you bring these with you, that you trained with these particular skills that you're going to use, and they're different for everybody. But you trained with these skills before you were born. So dreams can even show the period before you're born and the practice that you put in for this. And then they say, okay, look, it's really important that you develop these because you have promised other people, you have karmic obligations to other people that are here, that you're going to develop these skills and you're going to use them to help these people in their lives and help them move forward. And in doing that, you're going to pay off your debts that you have to them for things, for whatever reason that you've got these. And that can become a complex issue. But the simplicity of it is, when you discover what you have and when you learn how to use it, that's really when you feel like I've made a connection. I know what my life is about, and I really feel like I'm on the path. And it doesn't matter what that path is, but it'll just be perfect for you once you start doing it. And your dreams are all relentlessly telling you this is what you need to do. Of course, they will focus on other things in your life, like your health. That's huge. They will always say, you need to do this to stay healthy. You need to stop eating this particular food. You need to exercise more, or whatever it happens to be. But they will also link these health issues to other things as well. So it's really good. Quite often there's a link between things that you wouldn't suspect. Like an ability to do healing could be linked with a digestive system problem. So they're saying, okay, if you work on either one, both will improve.
Mm-hmm. Just recently, too, we've been doing a fascinating string of segments, two of them of which deal in the afterlife. One of them is the near-death experience, Dr. Raymond Moody, we just recently had on the program. And then just yesterday I was speaking with Rand Hollister, who wrote a book about basically children who die and they still communicate with the people they leave behind, and the different questions that people have about, well, what is death like and what's on the other side? And she is an experienced and very internationally recognized medium and talking about that. And then the other one we did was the secret teachings of plants. Now, there's a fascinating one when you were just sort of taught, well, what you were just talking about is how the body can talk to you about, what needs to happen to heal itself. I always wondered, how was it that, for instance, the shaman in indigenous cultures knew exactly which plants to go to? It wasn't by trial and error. Geez, that seems interesting. Why don't I try it for this? It just seemed too random. And there was a point, in that particular thought, and this was some years ago, that I felt that the shaman were so connected to their landscape that plants were allowed to come in and communicate to say, this is what you're looking for your group. And they were able to accurately depict where that was. And when you think of places such as the forests of Borneo or the Amazon rainforest basin, you really have to have some accuracy down there, if you're going to do anything, especially when it comes to collecting plants. But the fact is that when you look at the metaphysical level, zeroing in on that keyword physics, you realize, as you said, that matter and energy all have a dynamic communication in themselves, and through soul can snap a really beautiful, accurate picture of bringing it all together in a way that our, at times, linear mind can see as a logical bit of sense.
Yeah, but it's really easy. You can take. I used to do this on my courses. I still do sometimes. I would put a cigarette butt in one cup, water in another cup, and then something like milk or other things in different cups. And then using muscle testing. So this is people who have no training whatsoever. You just do muscle testing, and they do it on each other. They can tell what's in each cup because your body, your muscles will weaken. Your body will weaken when you're around something that's not good for you, and it'll strengthen when you're around something that's good for you. So you can test plants that way. You can test anything that way. Mm-hmm. And it's quite interesting then. It's very gobsmacking, to use an Irish word, to people to realize that their own body has this wisdom, and they were never aware of it before. But a kinesiologist, that's what they use all the time to test all these things. But I think the shaman goes a little bit higher than that because they also communicate with the spirits, and spirits will also tell you and direct you, okay, this is something that's good. And then you can become part of the equation and test it yourself.
And certainly you had, I believe it was 3 spirits that told you it's time for you to wake up and do what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Just imagine it was a good thing you were clothed while you were asleep in bed, right?
It was, yeah, so that was unpleasant. And then I had I had this one spirit that kept coming back, and it would walk through my body, and it would be like I was being tasered while it was walking through my body. And that one just wouldn't stop. It would come every 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And it was because of that one I really went and looked. I mean, I would have probably put up with the other things, but the pain wasn't pleasant. And so when I learned how to do it, and I learned how to control and prevent spirits from doing anything that would be painful, then it became fascinating. And so it changed from something I was afraid of to something I was now intrigued with because I could see things. And so it was about a year and a half after that I got into the dreams. And when I started teaching the dream classes, I would be looking at the group of people that would be, the participants, and I'd be looking at their guides standing behind them and other spirits in the room and talking about spirits, because for me, the enthusiasm was there because this was all so new. And a lot of people would be saying, I'd like to believe in it, I'd like to believe there are angels or guides, but I don't really. And I'm looking at them and I'm looking at their angels and going, okay, what do I do here? So one of the times I just said, okay, what the heck? And I got somebody to stand up against the wall, and then I showed them where the spirits were around that person, and surprisingly, everybody could see them. So then I added that to the class. Now, the difference after you do that in a room and people sit down, they are wide open. They want to hear what you're saying after that point, because you've just changed their perspective in a great way, And what would happen, though? It was so successful. I would say to people, look, this is going to happen. This is what you're going to see. Some people would step out of the room because they're not ready for it, but that doesn't happen today. People are more open today.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the fact is, too, get in any group of people, whether it's, one person or there's 3 or 4, you even just bring up dreams, and you watch this wonderful openness that no matter how crazy it sounds coming out of somebody's mouth, people are generally open and all ears and willing to share, at times, some intimate things that they probably normally wouldn't talk about.
Oh, absolutely, and it's stunning. Even in an elevator, you can overhear somebody telling a dream to their friend, and you're going, oh my gosh, do you know what you're saying about yourself? Mm-hmm. So it's quite surprising. A lot of the times in dreams, what they're saying is something you're delighted to hear. But there's never a time when you shouldn't want to hear it, because it's always good advice. It's like the best advice you're ever going to get. It's like you've got when it comes to just health, and this is actually, health is an area of dreams that most people completely ignore. On my website, like I don't know, thousands of pages, and the health side is, maybe only 5%, gets 5% of the hits. When people are sick, then they're interested. Mm-hmm. But the health comes up way in advance of you ever manifesting an illness physically. It'll show up in your dreams saying, look, this is what you're doing and this is where you're heading. But no, it is surprising what people will reveal and give away in their dreams.
Now, when you take a look at the title of How to Interpret Your Dreams, is that there are so many books out there that, for instance, it'll be 10,000 Dreams Interpreted, or it's the Dream Dictionary, and you take a look at that. I've actually said this on the program, and at times I've had people who are in the work of dream interpretation that have agreed with me. I said, it seems a little silly that somebody would come out with this book and say, well, this dream means this, because as you were alluding to earlier, it's pretty much different for everybody. And I know that in your book, that in the back you actually have a dream dictionary which pretty much defines what symbols are in your dreams. So the first thing I wanted to start off with is, when we take a look at that dictionary that you have in the back, how was it decided that symbols that you have in your dreams specifically mean this, for instance? Like, there was one example you gave of a pink carpet means that you and perhaps your mother are having problems.
Okay, well, colors are the easiest thing to interpret, because the interpretation of colors comes from their interpretation in the aura. And colors just have a particular energy, a particular vibrance, and they mean particular things. They do particular things in your body. So if anybody tells me a dream and they include colors, I go straight for the colors, and then I look at the other symbols afterwards, because colors are just that good.
So colors are like the primary thing we take a look at, and then we go through the rest of it?
Yeah, but most people won't tell you colors in dreams. A lot of people even believe they don't dream in color. Mm-hmm. And the ironic thing about that is, not dreaming in color tells you something about the person too. So it is kind of funny. But pink is a mix of red and white, and it's when you look at the different chakras. So if you get a color that matches a chakra, the heart chakra is often described as green or pink. Now, no chakra is ever a specific color. If you can see the chakras, the colors are changing. It's a mix of colors all the time. But its natural red energy would be around the energy of the color that they ascribe to it. And so pink, being a mix of red and white, is about love and unconditional love, because the heart chakra is about compassion and love and sharing and so on. And so when you see that, it's usually put in a dream as a healing device, and it's one of the few colors that has really just one meaning, and it is a meaning of love. So if you find yourself in a dream being given love, and dreams will actually give you when you're not getting in reality, in physical reality. So to be given love in a dream means that you didn't get it in reality. And of course, in that dream, the person was sitting on the floor, so that tells us a timeline. The time in your life when you used to sit on the floor was when you were a child. So it's saying you didn't get love when you were a child, and that's why you can say that particular one means that you didn't get love from your mother, because it's love. Heart chakra is female energy, and that's going to be affected more by your mother than it will by your father, just because of the female energy side of it. So you can never say 100% this is exactly what this dream means, but you can get it fairly. You can get about 90%, and then of course if you can channel, if you can connect with your guides and ask, okay, is this correct? Then of course you can get it the full way.
Mm-hmm. Now I know that through the book that you actually start off with, for instance, it's usually about a paragraph to two paragraphs where you say, here's the dream. Like one of the ones that I'm looking at now is the magician. And what you do on that particular one is that you point out components of that dream. For instance, it says, I am in a cinema theater. Now, it's really interesting because, just to elaborate on that just for a quick second, as I have talked with people over the years, they all of a sudden, as I talk about things in dreams, they seem to think that I'm some sort of an expert. And I say, well, let's just take a stab and use some reason here and see what you think. But when you say something specific like a cinema, that's a very specific thing. And what I'll actually suggest to people as well is I'll say, for instance, well, what time of day do you believe this dream occurred when you're in the dream? Was it morning, afternoon, the evening? Was it after midnight, for instance? Was it sunny? Was it rainy? Let's take a look at some specifics. And it's really fascinating because taking a look at your dream dictionary, you kind of lay it out in a way that those symbols, the way they're interpreted, seem more reasonable than what I was alluding to earlier, the Book of 10,000 Dreams, for instance.
Oh, yeah. Well, I know that book. Some books are written because they make money for publishers.
Right.
That's all they do. And it's just, it's unfortunate. There are many books out there on dreams that are great, and there are many that are absolutely just rubbish, not worth the paper that they're printed on. And you have to discern and decide. Like if you go on a website, there's lots of websites. If you have to read around all the adverts, then that website is there making money through the adverts. It's just, that's the way human nature is. So not everything's accurate. But you take a symbol like the cinema, and the cinema, of course, when it came out, I mean, kids today probably wouldn't realize it's as revolutionary as it was, but I mean, it's where people used to go to catch up on news. There was no television sets. It was like it brought a whole new world, an expanded world to people. Like it literally brought it to them, and people would go to the matinees and go and see the news beforehand, etc., etc. So a cinema still means that, but really, it's about an expansion of life. So it's about how you can expand your life. But when you look at a symbol, you have to look at it logically. It has to make sense. And so if you're reading something and it says, okay, this means this, and to you it's like, no, I don't see that, then go with your gut, because you have what are called archetypal symbols, and they're symbols that will mean the same thing for everybody, generally. And universal rather than archetypal probably is a way to look at it. That we know, for instance, the church, a synagogue, and a mosque, without getting into the details, we know they're places of worship, so they're going to be about God or something spiritual. Now, whether you believe in those religions or not, it doesn't matter, because you still know that people worship in those, so it's still a spiritual thing for the people that go there. So it's still going to mean that in your dreams. But any particular symbol can be overridden by you and your personal association with that symbol, and that's really important to understand. So that's why you look at all the symbols in a dream and you say, okay, I see one symbol that's about expansion of life. Do I see another symbol? Do I see two more symbols that say it's about this, that corroborate my hunch about the first symbol? And when you've got them all and you put them all together and they all make sense, then you can say, okay, I've got the dream interpreted. But if you can't put them all together, if you can only get one or two symbols, then you have no way of knowing that you actually have a correct even hint about what that dream is about.
Mm-hmm. Now, I think what's fascinating about dreams is I believe that as a person begins to try to recall, because dreaming is like a muscle, I think, when it comes to recall. The more you work at it, the more you do it, the stronger it gets. And you start going to levels that, and I'm sure you've had these experiences, Michael, that start to go into what is known as the phenomenal. And as a sort of a benefit, or one benefit anyway, is that you develop your mind, in the waking state to such levels that is just almost unimaginable. What has been your experience about that?
Yeah, when I was getting into dreams first, I was doing techniques to help me remember them, and I've no difficulty. I never really had a difficulty with dream recall. But yeah, it's like anything you apply your mind to, you're going to get better, and it's going to get easier to do. And it's exactly the recall, like you say, that gets easier, because everybody dreams except people in a coma, and so it's everybody dreams. So it's when you can't remember them, it's not that you didn't dream. So when you put in the effort, when you start reading about dreams, obviously your recall is going to improve because your interest has increased, and you've told your mind, okay, this is something I'm interested in, let's bring it further. And it gets better and better and better. And then you can do techniques to wake yourself up in a dream while you're still in the dream and become lucid, become aware that you're having a dream. And there's several levels of lucidity. So you can be aware you're having a dream, but still go through the dream just as you would have normally, but still go, okay, I know it's a dream. Mm-hmm. And in those type of dreams, you might just lose the fears that you might have had in the dream. Or you can get to the point where you say, okay, it's a dream, I can fly, or I can do other amazing things. And then I have friends who actually try reach a state where they go, okay, it's a dream, I'm now conscious, I'm in a dream, and then they break out of the dream and they fly around the spirit world, or the astral plane. And so there's all those different layers. But yeah, it does spill over. If you start looking at anything spiritual, it does spill over into your waking life, and it tends to bring with it a great sense of connectedness and joy into your life.
Now, for our listeners out there, let's go ahead, if we can, and maybe share a technique or two for those who have difficulty being able to recall their dreams, how they can start on this path, because this is something everyone, as you just said, is able to do, but it's like exercise. You don't just get up and sprint, a mile. It's something you have to take a little bit of time until you're able to do something like that. So let's talk about a technique or two that our listeners, perhaps starting today, can help to recall their dreams better so they can start developing this wonderful world that's pretty exciting as you develop it.
Yes, yeah. Well, one easy one is if you get a glass of water and put it on your nightstand as you in bed, and then pick it up, put your hands around the water, not touching the glass, or your hands not touching. So your left hand and right, your hand aren't touching, your fingers aren't touching. And imagine energy flowing between your hands. It is flowing there because you have chakras in your hands. But in your mind, say to yourself that you're going to remember your dreams tonight. When you wake up, you're going to have a dream that's important to you, important that you remember, and it's going to give you focus on something that you need in your life. And you can be very specific. You can say, I want help in my relationship, or I want help with my career, or whatever it is you want. And then pick the glass up and drink half of it, and then leave it on the nightstand, cover it up, and then when you wake up in the morning, drink the rest of the water. And it's surprising how that works. And I think it is, of course, you're charging the water. It's a bit like a homeopathic remedy. You're telling your body through the exercise that you're doing that you're going to have this recall. But it's also the focus and the attention you're given. So you could do this through a meditation as well and say, okay, I am programming my mind to have better dream recall, and you will have better dream recall. But it is something. It's all to do with your belief in what you're doing. Mm-hmm. But it's a very, very easy one. There's other ones. There's many other ones, but that one always works.
Now, you say that dreams are a way for the soul to communicate to us, correct?
Yes. It's more your higher self communicates with your soul. So if you look at us as...
So it's like the super consciousness, in other words, trying to, talk to the subconscious, eventually making it to the conscious mind and so forth. Okay,
so it is your higher self or your super conscious talking to your soul, saying these are the changes you need to make, and reminding it, saying, okay, remember, this is the plan, this is what we were going to do. You're going to develop your spiritual healing ability, or you're going to develop your special ability to teach kids and work with kids and so on. It doesn't have to be something that we would consider spiritual or paranormal. Many things like music, writing, poetry, singing, etc., they're all spiritual gifts as far as your dreamscape and life purpose are concerned. Mm-hmm. So it's really a dialogue between your higher self and your soul, and so your higher self is saying, okay, this is the change I want made, and it dispatches a dream for that purpose. And then you interact, because we're all the characters in a dream. You interact and say, okay, I don't want to make that change. I regardless of everything else, I want to stay where I am, and I don't want to do this. Or you might take it on. So characters will change in the dream. So you might have, for instance, if you've got a strong mind, a strong intellect, and you've been told to use that to help other people, that would, for instance, give you an ability to do hypnosis and help people that way, or absent healing, or projecting onto others and stuff, which you can use with other things. So say you had that particular skill. That can show up in dreams as people with the ability to fly, or anything with, like a bat having an ability to fly. So a character might appear in your dream, but then turn into Dracula, and you're dead scared of it and try run away. So it didn't start out that way, but your interaction in the dream shows your fears and reluctance to develop a skill set that you have, or use a skill set that you have, and you try run away from it. So just by analyzing the dream, then we can say, okay, you've got this ability, you don't want to use it, but when you consciously look at it, when you let your conscious mind in on it, you can then take steps to overcome your fear and then start using it in a positive way.
You know, speaking of fear in dreams, when you think Dracula's chasing you, there was a series that really, in the movies, that actually addressed that very thing. And, of course, anybody who's familiar with Nightmare on Elm Street knows who Freddy Krueger is, and the only time you see this guy with blades on his fingertips is when you go to sleep in your dream. And I remember the first time I had seen any one of those movies in the series, I think it was the third one, and it was where these teenage kids were basically in a mental health institution because they were having a hard time going to sleep knowing that Freddy was waiting on the other side for them. And so in this particular movie, they were exploring the possibility of being able to wake up in their dreams where they might be able to confront this guy and say, look, you're just a dream and I'm going to whip your butt. I'm done. I want to start living a regular life, but of course, Freddy being who he was, well, it isn't that easy.
Yes, yeah, I never remember that movie.
But I have to ask the question, has it ever happened that you're aware of that somebody has actually died as a result of their dream? For instance, there was that movie Dreamscape back in the 1980s, which was a fascinating movie, I thought, because of how they portrayed the dream and the way it looked. I thought, that's about as fairly accurate as I've ever seen in the movies of what a dream really, the sequences that it takes on. But, that was the whole idea, is they were trying to train this person who had the ability to become lucid in somebody else's dream, and the whole idea is to eventually basically assassinate the president while he was asleep.
Of course, Hollywood edging. But, brilliant movie, too. I love that movie. So what you could do, we think, I don't know why it is, but as adults we do think, a lot of people think that if you die in your dream, you'll die in reality. And a lot of people, like when they fall off a cliff, for instance, in their dream, they wake up before they hit the bottom and make themselves wake up from other horrific things in dreams. But as children, we die several times over each night in our dreams. It's only as we get older that starts to fade away, and we don't die in our dreams. Sometimes people do. Mm-hmm. Like one guy had dreams all the time where he was either being crucified or flogged to death or put to the lions, etc., etc. And he had done something in his life that he wasn't particularly proud of, and the dream was showing him that he was really persecuting himself for this. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the dreams can be very liberating. Your guides and higher self and everything else involved, all the angels, they would not judge you on anything you've ever done in your life. They always say, okay, from where you are now, here's how you can become a better person, and here's how you can improve your life and improve your understanding and your spiritual well-being. Mm-hmm. So everything is always an opportunity from this moment forward in your life, and everything that's happened to you in your past is something you can learn from when you examine it and look at it, in context of everything else. So it's really good that way. That you look at where you are now and say, okay, each dream is going to say, here's how I go forward. But going back to do we die, you still can. I was talking about this guy who persecuted himself. You still can die in your dreams, but we just don't tend to. We can get attacked and beaten up, and that tends to be the max of it in an adult dream. But when you have lucid dreams, when you can become lucid in your dreams, you can overcome the fears. So say you're being beaten up, you become lucid, and you can use a power, or just decide, okay, these blows aren't going to hurt, or change the character of the people and they move away, walk away, etc. And when you do that, you will never have those type of dreams again. It's like a turning point. It's like you've accepted whatever the message was, because in the lucid state you no longer are afraid, and you take the message in that your higher self was trying to give.
Yeah, you bring up one that you pretty much hear consistently from people, and I'm sure it's probably like this around the world, and that is, it to me becomes what I would call a dreaming urban legend. And that is, well, when you fall off of a cliff and you actually land at the bottom, they say you die. Okay, most of us, if not a lot of us, have heard that. And it was based on that when it actually happened for me. That's one level of lucidity. I mean, mine goes way back to when I was about 4 years old, where when I first seen the movie Godzilla, we're talking about the original 1954 version here, folks, and that I would have Godzilla chasing me. Now, not that I seen him, but you could hear the thundering footsteps. Boulders were being flung and landing to my side, very large ones. And I remember going to my mother, and this was someone who finished half of high school. Then she had to have me in, and that was the end of that. And I went to her really troubled about this, and I said, what do I do? And she says, in her wisdom, well, just turn around and face him. And I thought, well, that was fascinating. And generally, it's known through there's a dream tribe, I believe it's known as the Sonoy tribe in China, that is the first step, that it's known as the lucid dreaming tribe, and that they use nightmares as a purpose to elucidate lucid dreaming. Now, that being said, jumping up to the cliff thing, is that happened, and I remembered that when that did, that somehow that urban legend seeped into the dream. Well, if you land, you're going to die. And I thought to myself, well, let's just find out if that's true. And that's when I started my flying dream, because I swooped down and I just went into the air, and I thought, wow, this is wonderful. And then from then, I started embarking on consistently trying to fly more and more like Superman, and I found it very entertaining as I was thinking about that I hit that point about dreams quoted by Christopher Reeve. But the fact is that truly is an urban legend, but how did we come up with something like that so collectively in the first place?
I don't know how we came up with it, but I mean, there's a lot of nonsense perpetuated, not just about dreams, about all things spiritual. So I think we know fear sells. Newspapers are full of stories that really you probably shouldn't be reading, because they're about different parts of the world, things that you're not going to cross in your life, but they're all downers, or almost all downers. Mm-hmm. But people are attracted to that. Or some people are, not everybody is, but the majority. But I don't know where that one came from, but it's clearly not true, because if you ask your kids their dreams, and this is always kind of funny, because when people do the courses and then they go, okay, I can now interpret a few dreams, I'll try my kids, they're horrified.
I can imagine. Kids have one heck of an imagination, don't they?
but it's really, when you think about it, what is a kid trying to come to terms with? They're trying to come to terms with their mortality. If you look at, I've two grandkids, a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, they're like little suicide machines. You have to watch them on a constant basis, especially the 1-year-old. He'll climb the city and jump off the other side, if he could. It's just nuts. And so their dreams are reflecting, that you're now, like, they've come from the spirit world where there's no harm can happen to them. And they've got to come to terms with it. They've got to be careful here. And it shows up in their dreams with all these things about, your body, you can lose your body, you can lose your body, you can lose your body, all by showing how it can die in different ways that can happen. And then it's compounded by the fact that as we are trying to help our children and help them grow, we're like, don't put your hand in the fire, don't walk down the stairs, wait, and don't run out in front of traffic. So we give them fears too, and these will all show up in their dreams, and this all helps their dreams be horrific. But then they do come to terms with it, and their dreams turn much more placid. But it's interesting you talk about nightmares and looking at nightmares, but a dream that isn't a nightmare can have a much more horrific meaning than a dream that is a nightmare. A nightmare is just guaranteed to be a dream that you're likely to remember, or guaranteed to remember, because it just shocks you. But the interpretation isn't necessarily bad. And like I said before, though, there's no such thing as a bad interpretation. So if you have a dream, even taking something very strong, saying that you've got a warning that you're going to have a stroke or a heart attack, it's a warning. Would you rather not know and wait till that event happens? And that's the thing that people say. Such had a sudden heart attack. There's no such thing. Your dreams will be warning you for 20 years in advance of a heart attack of what you're doing wrong and why you're going to have it. So it's an area of dreams that I feel is extremely overlooked and extremely valuable. But that being said, like I have a chapter and I talk about cancer and how to recognize it in dreams, and there are certain bookshops that wouldn't carry my book because it talks about cancer. Some people have such fears of things that you should no longer be afraid of.
Mm-hmm. Well, cancer certainly is one of those subjects that, to me, actually has a level of frustration due to the way that I've actually talked with several guests over the years, and I said they've turned it into a fashion statement to make a bunch of money off of this, rather than going in the direction to say, well, how can we take a look at this, A, prevent it, or B, once you get it, what is a more or less invasive way for ridding ourselves with it, which, of course, the cure for cancer was created almost 100 years ago, and yet they still take in all this money for research and so forth, and they still haven't found a cure, but that...
Yeah, but there are a lot of cancers that they have cures for, and
yes.
And there are specific ones they're very, very good at, and the tools they use now, like chemotherapy, it just means targeted. So there's lots of pills and things you can take that will go directly where the cancer is.
Mm-hmm.
But when cancer came out first, and this is why people are afraid of it, when it came out first there was no cure. So to be told you had cancer was a death sentence, and that's where the fear comes from. But it's no longer that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's that fear that makes people wait and wait and wait, like they feel a lump but they don't go to the doctor, and it's that waiting period that causes the real problem.
Mm-hmm. But that being said, but you're right, I can see where there would be trouble with you producing a book that says, well, here, we can actually explore this, and your body's actually talking about this and trying to let you know, hey, let's start shifting directions. And I think that's what's so marvelous about dreams. Even going back to the nightmare, you have the ability to change that outcome. You have the strength. So the question is, how do you go about that? For instance, in my case, as a young child, my mother said, just simply turn around and face it. The fascinating part is when I did, it turned into a very tall blonde woman, for whatever reason, I have no idea. She walked around the house, because I was in a very familiar field, is where this dream was occurring in Texas. Walked around the corner of the house, disappeared, and it had been years before I had a new Godzilla dream. However, when I did, I was enjoying the fear, the adrenaline rush of being chased. You see, that's how it changes it.
Yeah.
It's like that super excitement you get on a roller coaster, maybe if anybody's skydived, that adrenaline rush. And so having Godzilla chase me was more fun. and so I turned it into that.
A beautiful blonde?
I have no idea, but it was a tall blonde woman. She walked around the corner of the house and disappeared, and that was it.
You did say you were 4, so we let you off that one.
But let's talk about, for instance, again, in dreams, people do a dream of death, or, potentially they're going to die. And again, I guess I have to use my example because right now our listeners are a little quiet here on the e-chat, but I see a couple of questions beginning to pop up. But here was one that I had when I was in my late 20s to early 30s, where I started having constant fears that I was having, in my dream I was having a heart attack. And the question was, do I go out and, run for help, or do I just kind of go into a room, and hopefully it'll overcome itself? And most victims, choking victims, die because of shame. They actually go off somewhere where nobody can see what's going on, hoping they'll get over this choking situation because of embarrassment, and they don't get the help they need, and they die.
Wow,
now,
I didn't know that one.
Yeah, and that was fascinating. This was some years ago. I read about this, but now in this dream, that became very consistent, and I realized what it was the work environment that I was in, because once I left that, those dreams stopped, but they also sort of stopped too. Is one day I decided, you know what, let's just go for it. This was that lucid moment. So I'm having this heart attack. I know I'm going to die, and I said, you know what, I'm going to just let myself die and see what happens. And it was very profound what happened next. I had died. The scenery was some of the most beautiful, colorful scenery that I had ever seen. I mean, you felt like you were in heaven. And I thought, is this all there is to it? You know, and that fear of dying was gone.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, and you talked about people with near-death experiences earlier. All of them, well, almost all, some people have bad near-death experiences, but it's a minority. But all of them, you could say, lose their fear of dying once they've gone through the experience, because they know what's on the other side after that point, and there's no fear of it at all. And it's very intriguing because, you would think that leaving your body would be, even if you've done it once, would still be such a fearful thing. But these people have none of it.
Mm-hmm. Now, going back to your book, the subtitle, and Discover Your Life Purpose. Now, as you open up in the book, you talk about, as I was bringing up in the beginning of the program, is that we come to Earth as soul to have an experience with the gifts and the things that we want to learn. We come here to learn. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Now, what's fascinating is the idea that when you become incarnated here on planet Earth, is that there's that amnesia that occurs. Now, it's funny that as young children, we know this, and they're still sort of in touch with God, if you will. But then slowly you forget about that. But I think, isn't that where that free will, I've given you everything you need, everything that you said you wanted to have here, but now you're going to forget all about that, and you're going to discover that on your own so that you have free will to pursue it. Is that kind of a way we can look at this?
Yeah, absolutely. The free will is there, but the free will is more controlled by your higher self than by you. So you come here with particular plans, and it's all about increasing your awareness of who you are and removing limiting beliefs. I mean, in a nutshell, that's really what it's down to, is trying to remove things that limit you and stop you from progressing. On the spirit plane, there are lots of different levels and levels of awareness, as in anything. But when you're on a particular level in the spirit plane, you're unaware of spirits at higher levels, and you don't know what you can be reaching for. On the earth plane, because of the density of the vibration, you can be beside somebody who on the spirit plane is way above you in terms of awareness, somebody that you wouldn't even be able to interact with, at least not on a regular basis on the spirit plane. So it gives us lots of opportunities. It starts off by, in childhood, screwing us up, giving us conditioning that is dysfunctional in ways. Also gives us good things, so we get a mix in our childhood. Then a process happens in puberty, myelination, and our thoughts become set. Our brain actually, loses its plasticity. It loses the ability to be as open as a child is. Like any child can learn any language. Once after puberty, you're not going to learn new languages, even after 3. So the plasticity is gone, and your personality is pretty much set by your childhood. And that's deliberate. The restrictions that you have with that mirror conditioning that you have on the spirit plane. So we then go through some experience in life, like we live a little with these problems, and then something will come our way to say, okay, now it's time to start working on these, because you know what it's like to live with them. You've got the problems. Let's eliminate them one by one, and that's when your life really starts kicking in and improving you and where you're going to be when you go back to the spirit plane. Mm-hmm. But it's an amazing tapestry, the interactions we have with our parents, like choosing our parents, choosing the people we're going to interact with on the earth plane while we're here, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just so rich. But we also, at an early stage in our lives, we choose how we're going to die. And there's many exit points along the path of our lives. And at any point, our higher self will say, well, you're so far off your path that there's no point continuing on at this point. We'll hit the reset switch and we'll come down again and we'll give it another go. And literally, it is that simplistic. Life is only a spiritual journey. And if there's no spiritual value in what you're doing, then there's no point staying here. Now, this is where the medical profession jumps in and can keep you alive on a ventilator for 25 years. It wasn't ever the intention. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of funny, and when you see, if you read books like Many Lives, Many Masters, which is about this one person and many lives that they had lived, from a spiritual perspective, your death is not a horrific thing. because you go back to the spirit world, and it's in fact a time of celebration because all your friends are there to welcome you, much the same way we welcome a new arrival here on the earth plane. So it's, they don't see it as the horrific way we see it, but it's only because we've got this amnesia, as you say, and we've lost what it's about. But you can get rid of that amnesia. You can tune back in and discover what things are about. But part of what the amnesia is for is, if you've done something horrific in a past life, it may help you this time around not to remember it, so that you can live this life sort of guilt-free. And then when you look at the two lives in context from the spirit plane, you can say, okay, maybe I'm not that's so bad after all. And like this whole idea that even that I'm talking about karma, but we are the ones that give ourselves karma. We are the ones that decide we have a debt to other people. There's no spiritual law that says you owe a debt to anybody. And if you can forgive yourself for everything that you've ever done, then you have no karma. But we tend not to be able to do that. So when we review our life and we see how we've wronged other people, and part of the review is we get to feel how they felt. We experience it from the perspective of the victim. So we fully understand, we are fully connected, and we know, okay, this is what I did. I thought it was simple. Now I know how it's affected that person and everybody around them. And in that moment, we decide I owe a debt, and we promise, okay, I'm going to help you. And in a future life or whatever, I'm going to do this, I'm going to develop this ability, and I'm going to help you at this point in your life. And then we come down, and our dreams remind us, hey, remember, you have all these debts, and it's using your particular ability, in my case, dreams. It's in using that ability, you're going to repay the debts. So get on with it.
Now, what's interesting that you had stated earlier is that we choose our parents as we come to this earth plane, and people would listen to that and think, well, what about all the children that come into abusive parents, or the children that come in and they end up going into foster homes, and the kind of abuses that we know can go on in places like that? You say, why would a soul choose to come into a life so tormented? Now, again, it really comes down to choice about what you do about those circumstances. Some of these people become very broken and almost seemingly hopeless, and others create foundations and they create missions to help stop all this stuff. It reminds me of the fascinating story of two brothers who grew up in a highly alcoholic, abusive household. One ended up in prison, one became a multimillionaire, and they both had the same answer as to how they ended up where they did from their background, and that is, I didn't have a choice.
I didn't have a choice to become a multimillionaire.
Because of my abusive family and background and so forth, I didn't have a choice but to do this. Yeah. But yet they ended up in two different places.
There are many people address that question. There's many books that address that question in beautiful ways. My favorite one is a book called A Free Spirit by Patrick Francis. And it describes real scenarios where people have come down, lived as an alcoholic, or as a child is abused, etc. And it can only be described from the context of a continuing spirit life. And the problem we have on the earth plane is we don't have the grasp of that, and we're looking at it. We're looking at things and saying, well, that's terrible over there. But this comes back to what I was saying before. A lot of people focus on negative things in the world, and you have to say, okay, is this something that I should be concerned with? And I don't mean that we should be, we should be compassionate. We should allow people live the lives that they're living. We should certainly help other people, but how far do you go with that? Some people are here and their purpose is to wake up a country and say, okay, look, here's what we need to do, here's what we need to change. And this happens from time to time to time. I mean, if you look at the way the Dark Ages were in Europe and the way the world is now, we can see massive paradigm shift after paradigm shift. And so we are progressing, we are evolving. And I do believe we will get to a state where there will be no atrocities on the planet. I think there'll be much fewer people on the planet when that happens. But it's certainly the way Spirit wants it to go. But if I have free will, for instance, and I have really wronged people in a former life, I may decide that I need to persecute myself. It's like a person going to confession and saying, tell me what I need to do. What's my penance? What do I need to do to absolve myself and purge these sins? So some people, some souls come here in the belief that living a difficult life, is going to somehow help them free themselves and feel remove their guilt for things they've done in the past. And really, they don't need to do that. If you can just forgive yourself, that's all you need to do. But like I said, that's very hard for people to do.
I'm sure people out there listening would wonder, well, what is Hitler going to do here? Crazy stuff to think about.
It is, but then again, does it directly affect you? And so a lot of people who do nothing in their lives focus on other things happening in the world and keep pointing at them and saying, how does that fit the picture? How does that fit the picture? Really, you should be looking at your life and say, how does this fit my picture? Mm-hmm. Now, it depends on your life. Like I said, it depends on, is your life in the public profile? Are you trying to affect other people on a large scale or on an individual scale? Like, you're obviously affecting people on a large scale on a constant basis. So it's different for different people. But for most people, it's only about their life, and they should be looking at their dreams are saying, just look at your life, look at what changes you need to make. You only need to change one person, and that's yourself. And that's what your life is about. Your life is not about worrying about other people in another country because there are other people here on the planet specifically with that task in hand.
Now, this question here comes from the producer, and I think it's a wonderful question. Unfortunately, we got about 4 minutes, and I just know this is going to be one of those But here's the question, and I've actually had some experience. I think a lot of us have, too, especially as you begin to recall your dreams with some very strong regularity. But the question is, if you have a prophetic dream that comes true, then does that mean that linear time is an illusion? And I like that one. Now, to give you an idea, years ago when I was working in the food service industry, there was a dream I had when I was taking a nap in between shifts. It was one of those days I worked a double. And I dreamed of this girl, and it was a place where you did tray service, so all your food was taken out on trays. And she was walking into where you would enter into the kitchen. You come around the corner, and then you go back in the kitchen to pick up your food or deliver the dirty dishes. And in this dream, she's carrying this tray, and she's going into that area of the restaurant, and she drops the tray and all the dishes onto the floor. I go into work that night, and it wasn't even that I was there 25 minutes. She's going out of the kitchen to deliver the food just outside to some tables in that area, and she drops the tray of food. I thought, oh my goodness. But a lot of people have dreams like this.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. So if you have that, it means you have a prophetic ability. Dreams that are prophetic, you can tell them from other dreams because it feels like there's a line. It's like there's a strong band across your stomach. Mm-hmm. And so if you have those dreams, you'll recognize that immediately. Go, oh yeah, I do have that. So that's how you know when you wake up that it's a prophetic dream or it's a dream I should just interpret normally. But so why do these things happen? And does it mean there is anything more than linear time? No, it doesn't. I mean, there is only the present. So mm-hmm. That's just the way it is. And there's many books talk about time as an illusion, etc., etc. It is an illusion, but you can get caught up in that really a bit too much, I think. And so if you just realize that there's only the present and you can only change things in the present, and the present and looking at things in the past is about how they affect you in the present. If they don't affect you in the present in a negative way, your dreams are never going to point them out. But the beautiful thing about having an experience like that is it's so personal, and it says to you, there is more to life. It immediately says to you, how could I know this? How could this be possible? And so it's one of the best wake-up things because it's not something you've read in a book. It's something that's actually happened to you and is a personal experience, and nobody else can take it away from you. And the idea of those things is to wake you up and say, okay, explain that one, because you can't. And then in trying to do it and pondering it, it should put you on the road to saying, okay, what is life about? Because that happened to me, and that shouldn't be able to happen.
Mm-hmm. Michael, it's certainly been a wonderful pleasure to have you here on the program, and I know our listeners are thinking, and discover your life purpose, how to interpret your dreams, and perhaps we sort of danced around that, but I think that we were very direct about a lot of ways that you can approach this, and I would like to send out an invitation to have you back out on the program again, and maybe we can pursue the people who are looking for the how-to part of this, even though I'm sure we touched it.
Have people calling in or texting in with their dreams, and I'll fly through them.
Very good. Now, Michael, tell us about that website. People can find out more.
Yeah, it's dream-analysis.com. There's thousands of pages there. There's a dictionary. And I'd be the first to say I think dictionaries are terrible. But when I was writing my book, they wouldn't take it without a dictionary. So
well, that's the way it goes. Well, Michael, thank you so much for joining us here on the program. What a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
So you can find out more. Also, you can visit us at beyond50radio.com. We'll have a dedicated link for you to find out more about how you can interpret your dreams and discover your life purpose. And our guest today, Michael Sheridan. We want to thank you, the listeners out there, for tuning in. You've been listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis, and remember, live your day past halfway.